Hello people, I am the Real Comic Book Gamer. Today I'm going to be talking about what's different between Superman Batman Public Enemies the movie and the comic book it is based off of. Now this is obviously heavily inspired by Cinefix's What's the Difference, which is where they take a movie and a book or whatever its source material is and they go through what's different, and that's what I wanted to do here. So yeah, obviously I'm pretty much ripping them off, but I wanted to do it for the animated movies that DC and Marvel do. Well, mainly DC because Marvel doesn't do too many anymore, but anyways, because when you go to the movies and the theaters and everything and you see like Winter Soldier or Civil War, you're not expecting an exact adaptation like ever. You're expecting them to borrow some elements, but not really to actually adapt the book you read, to where when it comes to the animated movies, you're expecting everything to be almost shot for shot and be very close to the book. So that's why I feel like this format very well fits with this. So I want to start off with Superman Batman Public Enemies because that is the first actual trade paperback I ever read, and I love it. And it's a book that's close to my heart, and I love it. And a lot of people talk about how they love the movie, and I've always talked about how I hated the movie, but I love the book. People don't really get why, so I'm going to sort of get into that today, talking about the differences, because they change a lot of stuff for no reason. Anyways, let's get into it. These two are incredibly different. I couldn't fit every single difference in here. I didn't go through everything, but I did go through a lot. So there's still some stuff that I'm not going to cover that is different in the movie and the book, but I am going to be going through most of it. So the movies start incredibly different. The comic starts off where it shows Bruce and Clark's first meeting. They actually met when they were kids, because when Bruce's parents died, Alfred decided it was good for him to get out of Gotham. So they went and they drove towards California, and on the way they went through Kansas, and they were like stopping to work on the car, and there they stopped right near a field where Clark was playing with Pete Ross. They were just playing baseball, and that was the first time they ever met. And then from there we go to another flashback to where we see Clark in the spaceship flying from Krypton as it had just exploded to Earth, and we see Bruce there in the alley with his parents dead. And that's how the book opens. The movie opens with sort of a montage showing that the world is in a crap place, that it's just in a really bad place, and we see that Luthor is campaigning to become president because he thinks he can fix all of it, and that's what he's trying to do. And then he gets elected president. In the book, however, Lex is already president and he's campaigning for his second term. He just announces him going for re-election in the book, so there's some big differences there. They open incredibly differently. One of Lex's first actions as president is he announces that superheroes are no longer above the law. If they do anything bad, that they're going to be put in their place. They're going to pay the price. But he does have some superheroes that he brought into the government to where they're going to work for the government. So he announces his new team that he's got that's working for the government, which is Black Lightning, Major Force, Captain Atom, Power Girl, Katana, and Starfire. But in the book, it's all those people plus Jon Stewart is a part of the team in the book. And also in the book, Lex never makes this announcement. He's never like superheroes are no longer above the law and all this stuff. He doesn't do that. But anyways, later, the first time we see Superman in the movie, he's stopping a criminal, and that's just on a high-speed chase, being chased by cops. And then some of Superman's team, Lex's team show up. His team of superheroes show up to confront Superman. They're like, hey, Lex isn't that bad of a guy, you should join our team. And Superman's like, nah, that's something else that just never happens in the book. The first time we see Superman really in the book, besides the flashbacks, is when he's fighting Metallo, because he confronts Metallo, who's breaking into Star Labs. From there, Superman and Metallo fight. Metallo is able to escape. We learn that, Superman learns that the reason he broke in there was because he wanted to find where his body was buried, because Metallo, if you don't know, he's now just all robot. He's not human anymore. So he wants to find where his old body was buried, and that's what he wants. And Superman also finds out through Star Labs that John Corbin, who Metallo was before he became a robot, was a petty crook who was in Gotham the night that Batman's parents were killed. So that's some information that he just found out. So he goes to Gotham to tell Bruce this, and Bruce is investigating a bunch of different graves that have been just dug up randomly in this cemetery in Gotham, but it's Metallo who's doing it because he's trying to find his body. But before he can tell him, they get attacked by Metallo, and that's the first time that we see Batman and Superman together. In the movie, however, we see that the first time Superman and Batman are together is when they're in the Batcave, and they're watching TV because Lex is about to make a big announcement. He comes on TV and he announces that there's this big kryptonite asteroid, this meteor that is coming towards Earth, and it's going to kill everyone, but they have like plans to stop it. And Superman's like, this is stupid. I could just be in a lead suit and go up there and smash the thing. And then Batman tells him that, nah, you couldn't do that because no amount of lead could save you from that amount of radiation, and even if you destroyed it wouldn't work well, and a bunch of stuff. And basically they're just showing that Superman's a complete idiot that always thinks with his fists first and nothing else. You're just like, oh, I could go up there in a lead suit and smash it, which I always hated. That's almost always how the animated Superman is showed being a just complete idiot, because in the book this never happens. He never has a conversation with Batman about how he's going to go up there and destroy the asteroid. But then Batman tells him that he's got a plan. He's already got an idea of how to destroy the thing, which we learn later is through Toyman, aka Hero. He's creating something that can destroy the asteroid. But in the book, it was Superman's idea to approach Toyman to build something to destroy the asteroid. So they're changing it. They're switching the roles there to where Batman's the smart one that thought of thinking up Toyman to destroy it, and Superman's just an idiot that decides, hey, I'm gonna go up there and punch it. But that never happened in the book. In the movie, Lex sets up a meeting between him and Superman, a meeting that never takes place in the book. And we see that he invites Superman to this meeting on TV. Superman decides to go and meet him. Batman, before he goes, is like, oh, don't count on me to save you. I won't do it. And basically telling him he's an idiot for going and meeting him. But anyways, he goes and he meets him. And when he's there, they have a conversation. Things don't go well. Superman ends up fighting Metallo, because Metallo in the movie is part of Lex's Secret Service, which is not the case in the book at all. Like I said earlier, the first time he fights Metallo is because Metallo was breaking into Star Labs. Metallo's a big part of the book. In the movie, they make him a big part, but for completely different reasons. There's no connections to him possibly killing the Waynes or anything like that. It's completely different. But anyways, Superman and Metallo fight. Superman is just getting his butt kicked by Metallo. He ends up getting knocked into a cemetery that's nearby where they met, which is sort of just connecting to the book where they fought in a Gotham cemetery. But anyways, they're fighting in this cemetery. Superman's getting destroyed. Metallo has him by the throat and is about to, looks like, kill Superman, and then Batman shows up to save him. The thing is, this is opposite in the book. In the book, we see that Batman is grabbed by the throat by Metallo, and then Superman lasers his arm off and saves him. Now, that does happen later in the movie, but the first part of Batman saving Superman, getting just killed by Metallo, never happened. That part never happened where he had him by the throat and was about to kill him. They just had to have Batman save Superman before Superman saved Batman, because, you know, Batman is just the greatest of all time, and he can't be saved first. He has to save Superman first. So they're fighting in the cemetery. Batman and Superman are both fighting Metallo. Metallo ends up shooting Superman with a kryptonite shard, and then we get a difference of, I'm not going to say like every time there's a different line said in the book and in the movie, but this one was just stupid because there's a great line here where Metallo shoots Superman. He says, a gift from the bottom of my kryptonite heart, because he has a kryptonite heart. That's what fuels his robot body. And in the movie, he just says,
from me to you.
It's such a lame line compared to the great line we got in the book where he says, a gift from the bottom of my kryptonite heart. I loved it, but in the movie we get from me to you. Such a stupid line and an unneeded change. In both versions, Metallo, when he shoots Superman, Superman ends up falling into a previously dug up grave. And then Batman goes and he jumps in there to help Superman. And Metallo ends up burying them both in that grave. Now, this is the last we see of Metallo in the book. In the movie, we see that right after he buries them, Metallo is confronted by some shadowy figure that we learn later is Major Force. But he sees him and he just goes, oh, it's you. He's confronted by this figure and he says, oh, it's you. And then it cuts back to Batman and Superman. In both versions, Batman and Superman escape by exploding through the bottom of the grave into the sewers, and they work their way through the sewers to the Batcave, where Alfred removes a kryptonite shard, and we see that when he did that, Superman wakes up from the surgery that was just performed on him by Alfred, and Alfred tells him that he also cleaned his Superman suit because, you know, they just went through the sewer. And then Clark in the book says, my wife will appreciate that. In the movie, he says Lois will appreciate that. They never mention that Lois is his wife in the movie, which I just thought was an odd change. I felt like it was an odd, unnecessary change. They never mention that they're married at all in the movie. We don't see a ring on anyone's finger or anything at all. But in the movie, but in the book, he specifically says my wife, not Lois. So that was just a small, little odd change to me. In the book, we get a confrontation between Clark and Bruce because Bruce gets some intel from Oracle telling him about what Superman learned at Star Labs earlier, that John Corbin was there on the night in Gotham that Bruce's parents died. He had a pistol that had the same caliber bullet that killed Bruce's parents. So he's not happy with Superman because he's like, hey, why didn't you tell me about this? If I learned anything about Krypton, I'd tell you. And Clark is like, hey, that's the whole reason I came to Gotham, was to tell you about that. I had just learned about that. So this is a pretty big confrontation between these two characters, but it never happens in the movie. Instead, that scene is replaced in the movie with a scene where Superman and Batman are watching TV again, and they see that Lex Luthor is on TV framing Superman for the murder of John Corbin. He shows these clips of Superman punching around John Corbin and stuff and saying that he killed this man and that he didn't believe it at first either, but he thought, oh, it's probably because of the giant kryptonite asteroid and it's messing with his mind. Another huge change, though, from the book to the movie is in the book, right after they have this big confrontation with each other about John Corbin, Superman from the future shows up to kill his younger self. He shows up and he's screaming all types of crazy stuff. And this is a huge part of the book and plays a big part. It's a big component to the story in the book. Anyways, he comes and he's trying to kill Superman, and he's just fighting him. We get a really cool fight between them, but Bruce the whole time is trying to navigate to his kryptonite ring so he can help out. Superman ends up getting beaten up by future Superman, and then future Superman goes to stop Bruce from getting the kryptonite ring. He's about to kill him. He lifts up the Batmobile after smacking Batman around a bit, is about to throw it on top of him, just crush him with the Batmobile, but then Superman takes that kryptonite shard that Alfred took out of him earlier, puts it in the shotgun, loads it in there, and then shoots it at future Superman, which causes him to teleport out of there because he's too injured to continue the fight. And then the Batmobile almost falls on Superman because what was on Batman, because what was holding the Batmobile up, which was future Superman, teleports out of there, and then Superman saves him from the falling Batmobile. So there, Superman saved him twice in one instance, from future Superman killing him and from the Batmobile falling after future Superman teleported. But of course, they couldn't have that. They couldn't have Superman saving him twice from his future self. They couldn't have Superman beating the crap out of Batman on screen. We can't have that. That's not supposed to be how it is. We can't show that in animation. I thought, I hated that, especially because it was one of the coolest parts of the book and it plays a big part in the story. But in the movie, that never happens. There's never any fight between future Superman and current Superman and Batman. Later in the book, Lex reveals that a giant kryptonite meteor the size of Australia is coming down towards Earth, because that was revealed really early on in the movie, but it's not till a bit later in the book. But anyways, he reveals that, and he says the reason it's coming is because of Superman. If Superman wasn't here, it wouldn't be coming here, but it is, and it's all Superman's fault. So he issues a $1 billion bounty for Superman to be brought in, dead or alive. Now, in the movie, the reason Lex issues a $1 billion bounty, dead or alive, on Superman is because he killed John Corbin, and so that's why he does the bounty, because he says Superman is a menace with this meteor coming down. It's driving him crazy, so that's why he offers the bounty. In the book and the movie, Power Girl does play a good part in both, but in the movie she plays a much bigger part than she does in the book. And we see there's a part where Power Girl meets with Luthor to try to convince him that Superman didn't kill John Corbin, but in the book that meeting just never happened. We also see that in the movie, Batman and Superman break into Star Labs to examine Metallo's body until they're caught and by these guards that see them there examining Metallo's body, so they leave, and on their way out they get attacked by Silver Banshee and some other villains. But in the book, that's not what happens. What happens in the book is Superman asks Lois to set up an interview with Luthor at the White House about what's going on, and their plan is for Superman to go to the White House while this interview is happening on live TV and confront Luthor about his claims so he can get an honest reaction from him and talk to him and see if he can let people see how Luthor really is. But on their way there, Superman and Batman get attacked by Silver Banshee and other villains, so that's just a little difference there, the difference between breaking into Star Labs, when in the book they never did that. In both versions, when they're fighting all of these villains, Lex's team of superheroes show up and they take down all the villains with Superman and Batman, and then they say, hey, we're here to take you into custody for Luthor. So they face off against this team, Lex's teams of villains, but it ends differently in the book and in the movie. In the book, it ends with Superman grabbing, in both versions, Superman creates a tornado by flying really fast in a circle, so it confuses everyone. Everyone can't really concentrate on what's going on. And during this, in the book, Superman grabs Power Girl and flies to Japan, and Batman grabs Katana and takes her to Japan as well, but he uses a JLA transporter. But in the movie, Katana is not on their side. She's only it's only Superman that takes Power Girl, because it turns out later when they're in Japan that Power Girl and Katana were on Batman and Superman's side the whole time, and they weren't actually trying to fight them. But in the movie, it's just Power Girl who's with Superman and Batman. And in the movie, they don't take them to Tokyo, they take them to Metropolis. And when they're there in Metropolis and in Tokyo in both versions, they get caught by the Lex's team of heroes. They eventually catch up to them, and they fight. They have a fight in both versions, but how the fight ends is different. In the book, Katana cuts off Major Force's hands, and Major Force is just living energy inside a shell. So she cut open that shell, which releases all his energy, and so all the heroes have to join together to contain the energy. And Captain Adam ends up going and absorbing the energy and just disappearing. We don't know what happens to him till later on in the book. But in the movie, Power Girl is the one who goes and damages his armor. She puts a hole in his armor, and that's what causes his energy to come out and just be uncontrollable, and that's why Captain Atom has to absorb it, but he ends up just being injured. He doesn't disappear like in the book. Later on in the movie, Lex has a conversation with Amanda Waller about how the asteroid is coming and it's a good thing. Like, the asteroid is going to hit Earth. He's going to let it hit Earth so it can kill millions, possibly billions of people that the world couldn't contain anyways, in his words. And that from the ashes, he is going to rebuild a better world. In the book, that never happens. Him and Waller do have a conversation, but it's vastly different. Lex never mentions letting the asteroid hit Earth or anyone dying or building a better world from the ashes. That just doesn't happen. In both versions, Superman and Batman fight Captain Marvel, who's now Shazam, and Hawkman, but there's differences in the fights, because in both fights it appears that they lose, but later we learn that they don't. In the book, it turns out that Superman and Batman pretended to lose, so that way they could just get the jump on them when it was like, oh no, they're knocked out, and then they wake up and they just blindside them, and that's basically how they did in the book. In the movie, they were able to beat them because of Power Girl. Power Girl helped them win the fight, and that's a difference there. In the book, Lex gets word from Captain Marvel and Hawkman that Superman and Batman are in custody. So he announces this to the world, basically, which is not good. And since he does that, the Bat family and the Superman family go and attack the White House. It's a full-on siege of the White House, and it's awesome. It's a really cool part of the book, and we see that Lex Luthor takes out pretty much everyone, and there's this awesome part where Lex Luthor hits most of the Bat family with nerve gas. So he hits Batgirl, Huntress, Tim Drake, and Nightwing with nerve gas, and all of them fall except for Nightwing. And we see that Nightwing stands up with Lex beating his face, just like beating on him and hitting him with nerve gas already, and he's like, fall, damn you, and all Nightwing says is go to hell. And it's an awesome moment. He eventually falls because he is only human, but still, it's an awesome moment with Nightwing. But that never happens in the book. There's never any assault on the White House, which really sucks because it was such an awesome part and it didn't even take up that much time. They could have easily fit it into the movie. But later we see that Superman and Batman show up dressed as Hawkman and Captain Marvel. In both versions they do, but in one version they show up at the White House, and the other they show up at just some secret, in the movie version they just show up in some secret base. But anyways, they show up masquerading as Captain Marvel and Hawkman. We see that in the book, Superman grabs Lex and is just sort of buying time to make sure the Superman family and the Bat family are okay. And once they are, he bluffs. He pretends he's going to kill Lex, and Lex is actually scared for a second, thinking he's going to, but then he decides not to, and he just throws him into a bookshelf, and they leave. In the movie, we see that Lex is grabbed by Superman just like in the book, except he's grabbing him to interrogate him because they need information on the asteroid that Lex has. So he's trying to interrogate him, but he ends up falling over because he's too weak right now, since Lex has been pumping himself full of this sort of steroid and kryptonite hybrid, which he did in both the book and the movie. But in the book, it didn't affect Superman at all, but in the movie, it's affecting Superman. So then Batman grabs Lex and starts interrogating him because Superman's too weak to do it, which again, that never happened in the book. But anyways, in the movie, he's interrogating him about all this, and Lex is about to give him the files that he needs, but then instead he double crosses them and he destroys all the files. But then Amanda Waller shows up. She's like, hey, I got all the files you need. And then she says, General, arrest Lex Luthor. And the general's about to, but Lex escapes. In the book, Lex is never betrayed by Amanda Waller. In the book, Superman and Batman show up to Hero, aka Toy Man's base, where he's got the rocket ship that they need to go and destroy the asteroid. Superman says he's the only one that can fly it and survive, so he's going to fly it. And then Captain Atom shows up. It turns out that earlier we learned that Captain Atom, when he absorbed all that energy, he was sent to the future, and he talked to future Superman, and future Superman told him to make sure that present Superman, his younger self, did not fly that rocket. So Captain Atom shows up in the present day, knocks out Superman with this kryptonite ring, and then he goes and he just says, hey, I'm gonna pilot this ship, and Batman's like, basically asks him why, and he tells him why, and he's like, okay, you can do that, because he says, no matter who flies it and destroys that asteroid, you still have a ton of radiation to deal with, and my power is absorbing radiation, so I'll do that. And then Batman's like, okay, you can go and fly the ship then. So he goes and he flies the ship. In the movie, when they're at Toy Man's base, the rocket ship is remote controlled, but then Lex attacks. He's fighting Batman and Superman, and he goes and he destroys the remote control, so then it can only be flown manually. So Batman decides to go and be the selfless hero to fly the ship, because Batman has to be the big hero to save the day. They couldn't do it with Captain Atom. They had to have Batman be the big guy that saves the day. In the book, however, like I said, Captain Atom flies it, and Lex never attacks them at Toy Man's base. He doesn't go to show up to attack them there, because he has no interest in not stopping the meteor, unlike in the movie where he wants the meteor to come and kill a bunch of people. He doesn't really care about the meteor that much in the book. Now, in the book, he goes and he calls out Superman in Metropolis, and so Superman goes there to fight him, and they fight in Metropolis, not in Toy Man's base. In the comic, during Lex and Superman's fight, Lex tells Superman how he made a bunch of deals with Darkseid, then Superman just ends up beating him up and destroys his suit, and then punches him down to where Batman is. Batman tells him how Superman had basically been broadcasting the whole conversation that they just had about Darkseid and everything, and because of that, all that stuff's illegal, Lex is going to prison. So then we have a cool fight between Lex and Batman, where it's an beaten up Lex. Lex has already been destroyed by Superman, and so Lex and Batman are fighting, but Lex ends up getting some hits in and stabbing Batman, and he says this. He says, "Why are you wasting time here? Shouldn't you be solving the crime of the century? Who killed Thomas and Martha Wayne? Where is John Corbin?" Batman, and it really f's Batman in the head. It messes up. He's like, "Oh wait, what do you know about this? What's going on?" He ends up kicking Lex through a window, and Lex is hanging on the ledge, and he says, "Hey, we make a deal, and I'll tell you everything." And Batman's like, "Nah, I'll pull you up so you survive, but you're still going to prison." And Lex is like, "Nah, I'm not cool with that." So he lets go of the ledge, and he ends up boom tubing when he's halfway down the fall, because he was falling like 100 stories or something insane like that. But sadly, we never get that in the book. We never get that great moment, because like I said, John Corbin's already out of play by this time in the movie, and we never get this awesome moment between Lex and Batman in the movie. It sucks. Instead, in the movie, Superman beats Lex, and then Captain Atom brings him into custody. Batman flew into the kryptonite asteroid, destroying it, because he's the biggest hero of all time. He's just the best. Of course, you have to destroy it. So he goes up there, he destroys the asteroid, but most of his ship gets destroyed in the process. But Superman ends up flying up there, grabs Batman, and brings him back to Earth, and he survives. And in the comic, Captain Atom was the one who flew into the asteroid, and we're led to believe that he did not survive the collision. That's pretty much all the differences I have to talk about. There's a bunch more. There are also some smaller things, like in the comic, Lex's eyes are green, but in the movie, they're blue. I don't get why they did that. It's another thing to where it's like, did the guys that made this movie even read the comic? Because it really doesn't seem like it. It seems like someone, like they read a summary on Wikipedia and that was it. Because his eyes are clearly green in the comic, but they're blue in the movie. Again, that's just a nitpick, but still, it's weird. And there's some other stuff in here, like Superman talking about American democracy and why he fights for truth, justice, and the American way in the book that's not in the movie. And one thing that I can't blame the movie for, that I could never do, that is a big part of the book, is the fact that thought bubble, well, they're not thought bubbles, but they're the thought boxes are a huge part of the book. We see the thoughts between Superman and Batman, and we see that they're basically two sides of the same coin that they could never do in the movie, but there's still a lot of stuff they could have done in the movie that they just didn't, and they changed and was stupid, and that's why I'm not a fan of this movie when I know a lot of people love this movie. Just there's so much great stuff in the book that's not in the movie. Like the assault on the White House from the Bat family and the Superman family never happens, or the fight between Superman and his future self and future Superman almost killing Batman never happens. The whole subplot with John Corbin possibly killing the Waynes never happens. Lex getting into Batman's head in the end and stabbing him and also telling him, "Hey, I know about John Corbin, I know the truth," never happens in the movie. There's so much key stuff that they just kicked out of here. It's not like cutting the fat, it's getting rid of key stuff, and that's why I don't like this movie. But anyways, please let me know in the comments below, what did you think about all this? Did you like the movie? Do you like the comic better? Like, have you read them? What are your thoughts on it? If you want me to do more videos like this, I might. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Yeah, I grew up with the prenup. Mama said keep my C up. Now noticing I'm getting caught cracker and getting beat up, but I stayed up long nights, working hard on my craft. Gave a fuck about the bullies or anyone in my path.